Hey everyone, RogueGold here, welcome back to the Division 2, and today we are getting into some pretty revelatory lore. So, Year 6 Season 2, Shades of Red has been going on for a few weeks now, and I haven't talked about any of the lore drops yet, but we have been getting some good stuff. Now, under the new format, we are getting 2 drops every single week, one from the Manhunt Scout activity, and one from the Descent Com. So there's been some stuff building up, but this week's drop in particular finally made me pull the trigger to discuss all of this. We have got intel coming in about what might await us in Brooklyn when we arrive there next season in the DLC. We seemingly have confirmation about what Keener and Theo's grand plan in DC really is after they traveled down here from New York. So some quite exciting stuff across the board. I'm going to warn you right now, this video will contain spoilers for all things Shades of Red, again across both the Manhunt side of things and the Descent comms. So click off now if you don't want to hear those. But without further ado, let's go. Alright, now as usual, I'm going to play some of these comms and then I will give my thoughts. Let us begin with some of the Descent ones here, which are giving us intel on Brooklyn. Here's the first.
New York BTSU is out of commission. Dolores was eliminated by the cleaners and Aaron Keener. Looks like Conley is working with him. We knew she could be potentially a problem when she defected to the cleaners. I know our efforts are focused on DC, but I really think we should take the Keener rogue threat seriously. I'd like permission to put together a team in Brooklyn to monitor the situation.
Alright, so nothing too crazy here in and of itself. This begins to set some of the groundwork for these future ones that we're going to see. But the timeline here puts this shortly after the events of Episode 3 at Coney Island, right? So right before the events of Warlords of New York. And the thing to remember with both this comm and the next one is that Viper is in with Keener, right? Anything that she says or does is secretly in his favor and supporting his agenda. Because she is the triple agent who is both a hunter for Cal, she is in with the Black Tusk and Natalia, and she is a rogue supporting Keener. So my one big question after hearing this is why would she and Keener want the Black Tusk to establish a presence in Brooklyn when we know that that is where the resistance is building? I'm not fully sure. I do have a few theories that I think we'll get to as we go through here. But yeah, that was interesting. This also begins to set up his death in Warlords when she pitches to Natalia that we really should take this Keener threat more seriously. And that is what we really saw play out in Warlords. Alright, here's comm number 2.
Hey Nat, thank you for approving the recon mission to Brooklyn. Things are pretty quiet here compared to the reports in Manhattan. Rikers have crossed the bridge, but cleaners have isolated to lower Manhattan. Seems like the Midtown division under Fei Lau have been very effective in pushing the Rikers further south and keeping the cleaners' numbers in check. Even with Conley's help, they don't have the numbers to expand their operation to Brooklyn. They also seem to be planning another attack with Keener after the events on Coney Island. We may need to recruit some local talent to support our mission. Alicia and Agent Lau have history, and there may be an opportunity there.
Alright, so this one begins to give us some more tangible info. Apparently the cleaners have not pushed into Brooklyn, but the Rikers have. Now do keep in mind this is still happening back in the past, so things could have changed compared to the present day when we arrive. But gameplay-wise, I think this does make sense, right? Out of the 2 newer factions, and by that I mean, you know, the Cleaners and the Rikers were both introduced in Warlords as opposed to the game's launch. Out of those 2, the Rikers have been used less, I would say. So it wouldn't shock me if the Rikers and the Black Tusk are the 2 main factions that we'll be fighting in the DLC. As much as I would love an all-new one, I don't think we're going to get that, unfortunately. But again, we get the timeline sense here, as Viper is suggesting that they look into flipping Fei Lau. Again, that was all a part of the laid-out plan that Fei and Viper and Keener were all a part of. So yeah, some good info here. Now take a listen to comm number 3.
This is a bad idea.
Theo's request.
You cannot make his pregnant girlfriend the social director of the settlement.
He wants to keep her safe.
Then move her to Hoskins Farm. You can't keep her safe at Ground Zero.
It's not Ground Zero.
As far as Cal is concerned, anywhere you are is Ground Zero.
He should have thought about that before he sent his hunters after me and my crew.
Man, you used to be friends.
We used to agree on what the world should look like.
You want the same thing, power. You just disagree on who should have it.
Isn't that every war in history?
Sure, but it's also just another pointless war where everyone sacrifices themselves for some random asshole pulling the strings from the safety of their bunker.
I can't really leave the bunker if I'm supposed to be dead.
You really didn't think this part through, did you?
As soon as Faye gets access to Ellis, we can move on to stage 2, and I can come out of hiding.
Alright, so some very key things laid out here. Firstly, for any who don't remember, Maral McCarthy is the woman that Theo met while he and Keener were recruiting people for the Brooklyn settlement. And as we know now, the 2 are dating and she is pregnant. And so that is why when Keener recommends her for settlement leader in Brooklyn, Viper says that would be unwise since they are at Ground Zero. Which again makes me question why Viper recommended the Brooklyn strike team to Natalia to begin with, right? Did her and Keener and the Resistance want the war to be waged here for some reason. I guess we'll see. This comm also adds to the Keener and Cal lore by saying that the two knew each other, which we knew that pretty much from the past communications and dialogue that we've heard, but this definitely underscores that rivalry that now exists between them. Again, this confirms that this is all taking place a little while back, as Keener mentions Faye and Ellis, and he says that once she has access to him, he can come out of hiding and stage 2 of their plan can begin. Which makes me slightly question by his wording, was the plan always for Ellis to die? I mean, certainly it seemed that way from Faye's actions at Camp White Oak, but maybe Team Keener just felt compelled to neutralize the nuclear threat that he posed, with the button, so that Natalia couldn't use that on them once he did come out of hiding and the fighting began in Brooklyn? I'm not sure, but that's kind of my best guess there. But with Hoskins and Morale and more being mentioned for this Brooklyn settlement, it does make me quite excited to see what we're going to discover once we arrive there next season. Alright, now we have one final comm to take a look at, and for this we're going to be switching over to the seasonal scout collectibles, because this week's drop seems to have finally confirmed what Keener and Theo's grand plan has been all along. Take a listen.
Well, Conley was right. I love Trig.
The call was informative.
Oh yeah, there's so much pre-existing infrastructure we can use. It's just a matter of finding a mobile shade server and accessing the ANA backup. We just need to find a copy of the simulation program, and as long as we've got the server in range, we can manipulate the shade agent into seeing anything we want them to see.
Where do we have to go to get a copy of the simulation program?
The nation's capital. Washington, here we come. After we find a server.
Okay, so some pretty big reveals and clarifications here. If I'm to be understanding this correctly, this was the full plan. Keener and Theo wanted to access a mobile shade server because this is where Claire Ortiz had stored the backups of the ANA program. Those, of course, are the events that we saw play out in the Vanguard season. They then intended to take that server to Washington, D.C., which is the only place that has a copy of the simulation program, which again, the simulation is the Descent game mode and that overall technology that was developed for shade agent training and more. And so now those are the events that we've seen play out in these last 2 seasons. That is why Keener and Theo and Kelso went to DC. So that leads me to believe that wherever this climax mission is located with Theo for the season's finale, it will likely be wherever the simulation copy is located, and we will see him trying to copy that onto the mobile shade server. That's just my guess, but yeah, begin your theories of where that mission location might be given that information. But I am certainly very intrigued by how they say that combining these two things, right, the ANA backup and the simulation copy, will allow them to manipulate the shade agent to see anything that we want them to see. Now, when I hear that, at least in my mind, I see this as being another inventive weapon against the Hunters, right? We know that Keener sees them as a big threat, and he wants to try and find ways to take them down, ways to reduce the advantage that Cal and Natalia have on the battlefield. That seems to have been a big motivator for him making the Eclipse virus to begin with that we saw back in Warlords. And so, if Theo now has a way to tamper with their vision and perception, because again, Hunters are shade agents, they can tap into that same network and technology as the rest of us. So if this technological concoction that they're working on could be used against them, that could be a very big card to play in the war in Brooklyn. So it's pretty cool to finally get some confirmation on these characters' actions that we have been chasing around for multiple seasons now. And both Scout side and Descent side this season, they really seem to be pushing that Brooklyn DLC setup hard. And that is quite exciting, knowing that we are finally only 1 season away from that content releasing. So there you have it, my friends. That is all of the comms and lore recaps for this video. A lot of new, juicy information about what is going on over in Brooklyn, Keener and Theo and their plans and more. So many different bits to go off of, and I would love to get your guys' thoughts on whatever the most pressing thoughts, theories, whatever are in your mind after hearing this information. I kind of like the format that we've struck with these videos, so I probably plan to do more mini lore updates throughout the season like this. Certainly let me know if that is something that you would like to see, and whether it's for that or any other Division content I got coming your way. If you're not already subscribed and you want to stay up to date on everything with the game, then I would appreciate you doing so. We'd certainly love to have you around. But that is going to do it for me today, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Ow.